He didn't just humiliate the man. He did it after the war was over, after the law had already changed. His summer of 1867 pressed down on Blackwater Estate like a weight that refused to lift. Heavy air, unmoving, thick with the smell of river mud and rotting cane. From the hill, the big house still stood tall. White columns, wide veranda, everything designed to look unchanged. As if the war had never happened. As if the world hadn't shifted beneath it. But down in the yard, everyone knew it had. Chains were gone, but control lingered, reshaped, quieter, more dangerous. And Edmund Hale refused to accept any of it. He stood in the yard that morning, coat draped over his shoulders despite the heat. Boots clean, untouched by the mud surrounding him. Watching, waiting, until he saw him. Josiah Reed. Tall, still, moving with a calm that didn't belong to this place anymore. Not after everything. Not after freedom had been spoken, even if it wasn't fully given. Edmund's jaw tightened. There was something about the way Josiah walked. Not fast, not slow. Just, unbothered. Like a man who had already stepped outside someone else's control. And Edmund hated that more than anything. Bring him here. No shouting, no anger. Just quiet authority. The kind that had ruled this land for decades. Caleb Dern didn't hesitate. Minutes later, Josiah stood in the yard. Surrounded. Dozens of eyes watching. Some afraid. Some tired. Some already knowing what was coming. Edmund stepped closer. Studied him. "You think things are different now?" he asked softly. Josiah didn't answer. Didn't look down. Didn't challenge him either. Just stood. That silence. It irritated Edmund more than defiance ever could. "Get on your knees." The air shifted. Even the insects seemed to go quiet. Josiah didn't move. Edmund smiled slightly. Not amusement. Something colder. He nodded once. Caleb stepped forward. Shoved Josiah hard in the back. The impact forced him down into the mud. Hands catching himself. Knees sinking deep. A few men laughed. Thin. Forced. Uncertain. Edmund circled him slowly. Like he was inspecting something broken. "This is what happens," he said. "When people forget their place." No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to disappear. Josiah lifted his head slightly. His hands. And for the first time, he spoke. Not loud. Not angry. Just quiet enough that it made everyone lean in. "You're late." Edmund stopped walking. The words didn't belong here. Didn't fit. "Late for what?" he asked. Josiah didn't answer. Just looked at him. Not with fear, not with hate, but with something far worse. Understanding. The kind that didn't belong to someone on their knees. Something shifted then. Small, almost invisible. But real. Even Edmund felt it, though he didn't understand why. "Get him out of my sight." Caleb grabbed Josiah, dragged him away, leaving a dark trail in the mud behind him. The moment ended, or at least, it looked like it had. Edmund turned back toward the house, adjusting his cuffs, restoring order, restoring control, or convincing himself he still had it. Upstairs, behind the tall glass windows, someone had been watching. Eliza Hale stood perfectly still, hands resting against the glass, eyes fixed on the yard below. She had seen everything, heard enough, understood more than either of them realized. And when Josiah had spoken those two words, "You're late," something inside her didn't react with shock or confusion, but recognition. Like a piece of a puzzle, finally sliding into place. She didn't move right away. Didn't rush. Didn't panic. just stood there, breathing slowly, thinking. Then, quietly, she turned away from the window and walked toward her father's study. 9 hours, that's all it would take. 9 hours, before everything inside that house, everything Edmund Hale believed he still controlled, would begin to fall apart. The house felt different after that morning. Not louder, not quieter, just tighter, like something invisible had begun pulling everything inward, slowly, deliberately. Edmund Hale noticed it first, though he would never admit it. He sat in his study, ledgers open, pen in hand, but the numbers blurred together. His mind kept returning, not to the humiliation, not to the control he had reasserted, but to those 2 words. "You're late." Late for what? The question lingered, unanswered, unwelcome. He slammed the ledger shut. Ridiculous, he muttered, more to silence the thought than to convince himself. Outside, the estate continued as it always had, or at least, it tried to. Men moved through the fields, slower than usual, quieter, eyes avoiding the house, avoiding each other. Because everyone had felt it. That moment in the yard, something had shifted, and no one knew what it meant yet, only that it wasn't over. Josiah Reed didn't return to the fields that day. He sat behind the old storage shed, hands resting on his knees, mud still dried along his sleeves, not cleaning it, not rushing to hide it, just letting it remain. Like a marker, like a reminder. Benjamin, one of the older men, approached slowly, careful, cautious. "You all right?" he asked under his breath. Josiah didn't look up. "I am." No anger, no weakness, just certainty. Benjamin frowned. That man's dangerous, more than usual today. Still, no reaction. Then Josiah finally spoke. "You don't see it yet." "See what?" Benjamin whispered. Josiah lifted his head slightly. Eyes distant, focused on something beyond the fields, beyond the house. Beyond everything in front of them. "It's already started." Benjamin stepped back, uncomfortable, because he didn't understand, and worse, part of him felt like Josiah did. Inside the house, Eliza Hale moved differently. Not hurried, not hesitant, precise, measured, intentional. She passed servants without acknowledging them, not out of arrogance, but because her attention was somewhere else entirely. Her father's study. She entered quietly, closed the door behind her, and stood still for a moment, listening. No one. Good. She moved to the desk, not the ledgers Edmund had been reviewing, but the locked drawer beneath. Her fingers hovered over it, then reached into her sleeve, producing a small key. The drawer opened. Inside, contracts, records, things never meant to leave this room. Eliza didn't hesitate. She began reading, line by line, page by page. Her face didn't change much, but her breathing did. Slower, heavier, more controlled, because what she was seeing wasn't new information. It was confirmation. Debt records, false ownership claims, illegal labor agreements, signed under names that no longer held power, but still carried consequences. Edmund hadn't adapted after the war. He had hidden, adjusted just enough to survive, but not enough to be clean. Eliza closed her eyes briefly, processing, not emotionally, strategically, because this wasn't just evidence, it was leverage. Outside, the sky began to darken. Storm clouds gathering over the river. Heavy, slow, inevitable. Inside the study, Eliza gathered the papers, stacked them carefully. Not all, just enough. Enough to break something. Enough to force a shift. She locked the drawer again, returned the key, and turned toward the door. Before leaving, she paused, just for a second, looking back at the desk, at the room her father believed defined his power. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "He really is late." And this time, it didn't sound like a question. Back outside, Josiah stood, not suddenly, not dramatically, just rising, like someone who had been waiting, and no longer needed to. He looked toward the house, toward the upper windows, toward something no one else could see, and for the first time that day, a faint, almost invisible shift crossed his expression. Not satisfaction, not relief, something quieter, something final. The storm hadn't broken yet, but it was coming, and everyone could feel it, even if they didn't understand why. By late afternoon, the pressure inside Blackwater Estate had become impossible to ignore. Not loud, not chaotic, but heavy, like the air before something breaks. Edmund Hale felt it in ways he couldn't explain. He moved through the house with sharper steps, shorter patience, eyes lingering too long on things that had never mattered before. Servants avoided him, not because he had changed, but because something around him had. He entered the dining room, paused, looking at nothing in particular, then suddenly turned, as if expecting someone to be there. No one was. He exhaled sharply. Enough of this, he muttered, but the words didn't settle anything, because deep down, he knew something had begun, he just didn't know what. Upstairs, Eliza was already preparing. She laid the documents out on her bed, one by one, reading them again, not for information this time, but for sequence, for timing, for impact. Because this wasn't impulse, this wasn't emotion. This was execution. She selected carefully, 3 letters, 2 signed agreements. 1 ledger page, enough to prove everything, without revealing everything. Then she folded them, wrapped them in cloth, secured them tight. Her movements were calm, almost detached, like someone performing a task she had already accepted. There was a knock at her door. Eliza, her mother's voice called gently. She didn't respond immediately. Then, yes. The door opened slightly. Her mother stepped in, eyes searching her face. "You've been quiet all day." Eliza said nothing, just watched her, studied her, as if seeing her for the first time. "Your father is unsettled," her mother continued. "He expects you at dinner." Still silence. Then Eliza spoke, softly, "I won't be there." Her mother froze slightly. "That's not a request." Eliza nodded once. "I know." Something in her voice, something controlled, final, made her mother hesitate. For a moment, it looked like she might argue. Then she didn't. The door closed. Eliza exhaled slowly. Not relief, just confirmation. Outside, the sky had darkened fully. Workers moved faster now, trying to finish before the storm broke. But their attention wasn't on the fields, it was on the house. Because word had spread, quietly, carefully, something was coming. Josiah Reed stood near the edge of the yard, watching. Not the storm, not the workers, the house. Approached again. More uneasy this time. "You need to leave," he whispered. "They watching you now, closer than before." Josiah didn't move. "I know." "Then why you still here?" Josiah turned slightly. "Not fully, just enough. Because it doesn't happen if I leave." Benjamin frowned, confused, afraid. "Happen what?" Josiah didn't answer, just looked back toward the house, toward the upper floor, where one window remained lit. Inside that room, Eliza stood by the mirror. Not adjusting her appearance, not preparing for dinner, preparing for something else. She picked up the wrapped papers, held them for a moment, then hid them beneath her coat. Her reflection stared back at her, calm, controlled, unrecognizable. She tilted her head slightly, studying herself. Then whispered, "This is where it changes. Not fear, not doubt, decision." Downstairs, Edmund poured himself another drink. His hands were steady, but tighter than usual. He took a sip, then another, trying to quiet something he couldn't name. "You're late." The words echoed again in his mind, louder now, more intrusive. He slammed the glass down harder this time. Enough. But it wasn't enough. Because somewhere inside,
He was beginning to understand, not fully, not clearly, but enough to feel it. He wasn't in control anymore. Upstairs, Eliza opened her door. Stepped into the hallway, steady, deliberate, not hiding, not rushing, walking straight toward the staircase. Outside, Josiah shifted his weight slightly, as if sensing something, as if the moment he had been waiting for, was finally moving. The storm broke. And inside Blackwater Estate, everything was about to follow. The first crack of thunder hit just as she reached the stairs. Eliza didn't stop, didn't hesitate. Each step measured, even, controlled. Below, voices had already gathered, men, neighbors. 2 local officials Edmund had invited that evening, trying to maintain appearances, trying to prove everything was still intact. Edmund stood at the center of the room, drink in hand, speaking louder than necessary, forcing confidence into every word. The estate remains fully operational, he was saying, nothing has changed. Eliza reached the bottom step. Silence followed, not immediate, but spreading, like something moving through the room. One voice stopped, then another, until all that remained was the sound of rain. Edmund turned, saw her. His expression tightened. "Eliza," he said, controlled, "you were expected upstairs." She didn't answer, didn't look at him right away. Instead, she stepped forward, into the center of the room. Every eye followed her, confusion, annoyance, curiosity. No one understood yet. Then, she spoke, calm, clear. "I need everyone to stay." A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. One of the men chuckled lightly, trying to break the tension. "I don't think this is the place." "It is." She didn't raise her voice. But something in it, cut through everything else. Edmund stepped forward. "This is not appropriate," he said sharply. "You will return upstairs." "No." The word landed harder than it should have. Because it wasn't rebellion, it wasn't emotion, it was final. Edmund's jaw tightened. "You will not embarrass this family in front of." "I'm not embarrassing you." She turned to face him now, fully, steady. "You already did that yourself." Silence, thick, immediate. Then, Eliza reached inside her coat. Pulled out the folded documents. Set them on the table. No drama, no flourish, just placement. Deliberate, controlled. "What is this?" Edmund demanded. She didn't answer him. Instead, she looked at the others. The men watching, waiting. "Before anything continues tonight," she said, "you should read these." No one moved at first. Then one of the officials stepped forward slowly, picked up the top sheet. His eyes moved across the page, then stopped. His expression changed, subtle at first. Then sharper. He flipped to the next. Then the next. "What is this?" he repeated, but this time, not confused. Concerned. Another man stepped closer. Read over his shoulder. His face drained of color. "This can't be." "It is." Eliza's voice didn't rise, didn't shake. "It's all signed." Edmund moved forward quickly. "Give me that." He snatched the papers, looked down, read. And for the first time that day, his control slipped. Just slightly. But enough. "These are private documents," he said. Too quickly. Too sharp. Misinterpreted. Incomplete. "They're filed." Eliza cut him off. "With the county office." The room shifted instantly. Men who had been relaxed moments ago. Now standing straighter. Eyes sharper. Calculating. "You filed these?" One asked slowly. She nodded once. "This morning." Another silence. Different this time. Not confusion. Not tension. Recognition. Edmund stared at her. Something breaking behind his eyes. "You don't understand what you've done." "I do." She didn't look away. "That's why I did it." One of the officials cleared his throat. "If these records are accurate." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone understood. Debt fraud. Illegal labor contracts. False ownership claims. Everything Edmund had hidden, now exposed. "This is a misunderstanding," Edmund said quickly. Trying to recover. Trying to regain footing. "I can explain." "You won't." Eliza's voice stopped him cold. "Because it's already been reported." The words landed. Heavy. Final. Irreversible. One of the men stepped back. Another set his drink down slowly. The room was no longer his, not his house, not his space, not his control. Outside, Josiah Reed stood in the rain, watching the lit windows, not moving, not reacting, but knowing, because, inside that house, the thing he had been waiting for, had just happened. Inside, Edmund Hale looked around the room, at faces that no longer respected him, no longer followed him, no longer belonged to him. And for the first time, he understood. Not fully, but enough. He was already too late. No one spoke for several seconds, not because they didn't have something to say, but because everyone in that room understood. There was nothing left to control. Edmund Hale stood motionless, papers still in his hands, eyes scanning the room, searching for something familiar, something loyal, something he could still command. There was nothing. The first man stepped back, then another. Not dramatic, not loud, just distance. Subtle, but final, the kind that ends power without needing to say it. One of the officials spoke carefully. "We'll need to review everything." Formal, cold, detached, not respectful, not afraid. And that was new. Edmund turned toward Eliza. "You've destroyed this house." His voice wasn't loud, it didn't need to be, it carried something heavier than anger, something closer to disbelief. Eliza shook her head slowly. "No, you just didn't realize it was already broken." Those words settled deeper than anything else that had been said, because they were true. And truth was something Edmund had never needed to face before. One by one, the men began to leave. No arguments. No confrontation. No defense. Just departure. Within minutes, the room was almost empty. Just Edmund, standing at the center of what used to be his authority. And Eliza, standing across from him. He looked smaller now. Not physically, but in presence. Like something invisible had been stripped away. "You chose him," Edmund said quietly. Not a question, an accusation. Eliza didn't respond right away. Then, "No, I chose this." He frowned slightly, confused. Still trying to place it inside something he understood. "You think this changes anything?" She met his eyes. Steady, unshaken. "It already has." And for the first time, Edmund didn't have an answer. Upstairs, the house creaked slightly, old wood adjusting, like it had been holding something too long, and finally let it go. Outside, Josiah Reed stood at the edge of the yard, rain soaking through his clothes. But he didn't move. Benjamin approached again, slower this time. More uncertain. "It's happening, ain't it?" he whispered. Josiah didn't look at him, just watched the house. "Yes. But not because of me." Benjamin frowned. "Then why you say he was late?" This time, Josiah answered, "Because now, there was no reason not to." He thought power was something he still had.
No, it already ran out. Benjamin looked back toward the house. Understanding slowly settling in. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel the shift. Inside, Eliza turned away from her father. Not waiting for a response. Not needing one. She walked toward the door, each step steady, unhurried, final. Edmund didn't stop her. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Because for the first time in his life, he had nothing left to enforce. The door opened, closed behind her. And just like that, he was alone. Outside, the rain began to slow. Clouds shifting, pressure lifting, but not disappearing, just changing. Josiah finally moved. Not toward the house, not toward anyone, just forward. Like someone no longer waiting, no longer held in place, no longer part of what had just ended. Behind him, Blackwater Estate still stood, but it wasn't the same. It couldn't be, because the illusion that held it together was gone. And what remained was something far more fragile, far more real. 9 hours earlier, a man had been forced to kneel in the mud, to prove someone else still had power. Now, that same power had disappeared, without a fight, without a scream, without anyone stopping it. Not taken, not stolen, just exposed.